This is Andrew Hodges, forensic psychiatrist and forensic profiler. We've been looking at the Natalee Holloway case. I'm telling you about a new approach to profiling, different from other profilers, reading between the lines of verbatim communication, which we have in the Natalee Holloway case, a 5-page email written from Deepak Kalpoe 5 days after her disappearance. We're looking at it for verbatim communication. In it, he promises to tell us the story of this crime. We're looking at how the unconscious mind communicates in thought prints. Again, think fingerprints, designs on the end of our fingers. Thought prints are designs from our unconscious mind, communications, pattern communications between the lines of his conscious communications. In this case, we've established that the first thought print pattern we saw is he promised to tell us the story of this crime. He used references, I'm going to tell you the story, the news, the truth, the shocking truth. So he's already told us this is going to be a shocking, shocking story of what happened to Natalee Holloway. We've talked about how at the very beginning of the letter, he has, through a thought print pattern, basically a death code as his thought prints come together to form the message, she is dead, the very first thing he's got to tell us, if indeed this is the roadmap to solving the case and finding her body, which I believe it to be, which was a question I had after I authenticated that indeed he wrote this email and wrote it 5 days after the crime. We've established, by looking at thought prints of death, repeated references in different forms to death. She fell asleep, she fell down, it was her last night, she's lost, she quit, and so forth. Now, we go from there. The first thing he does tell us, I'm going to tell you the story of the crime, she's dead. Now, what do we want to know? We want to know what happened, who was involved, and how she died. That's the first part that we want to know. That's what we want to know next. Now, as we consider his thought prints that came next, he must tell us what happened in this crime. He's going to tell us, as we look in his email, that this was a sexual assault. He makes plain that all three boys, Deepak Kalpoe, his brother Satish, and Yaron Vandersloot, were with Natalee the whole way, from beginning to end. The media in the last year has focused on a one-on-one beach story where Yaron supposedly left Natalee alone on the beach. We've recently seen a major shift back to the 3-on-1 story, which is the all three boys with her, all three all the way, as I say it. He is going to tell us, and he does tell us in his email, that these three boys were with her the entire night, all the way to the time she deceased and what they did with the body. So what happened to Natalee Holloway? She died. How did she die? He then portrays a sexual code, portrays a rape. How does he do that? Well, we look at his thought prints. He makes numerous sexual innuendos. We all know what sexual innuendos are. These are thought prints of sexual contact. We have images of their players, their sharks. He makes several sexual references to probes and so forth. There's one explicit sexual scene with Yaron in the back seat, and he talks about Yaron touching Natalee sexually, and at that point then he tells us she wasn't nude and it wasn't against her will. Why did he tell us that? Just think he didn't have to add that. It was unimportant, except he is telling us between the lines. One of the things we do in decoding is read through denials. Often denials are very helpful to get to the truth. He adds a detail. She's not nude and it wasn't against her will, telling us indeed she was nude. It was against her will. So what happened to her during the sexual assault? He also makes plain, if you follow the sequence in his letter, she was being sexually assaulted. Deepak is out of touch, and that's the moment of death. What happened to Natalee? He makes repeated references, and he puts it in capitals. She was very drunk. Read, she was filled with fluids. He makes references to her screaming, but you couldn't hear her scream. Her friends were screaming. You couldn't hear her friends screaming. So what is the story? He's painting a picture in many different ways that she was trying to throw up and couldn't. She choked and she aspirated and she drowned in her own fluids. And then what happened next? Well, we want to know what they did with the body. We can talk about that in the next segment. We will see also that he makes reference to a kidnap code. This is 5 days after the disappearance of Natalee. Nobody knows what's happened to her. There were rumors of her disappearance. He's telling us, he makes direct references, that she was kidnapped. How does he know this? Because he knows what happened to her. They kidnapped her. They had a plan to go off and have some fun, and it ended up a date rape gone bad. That's the story that he tells. Now, we're going to look where next. What happened? Where did they put the body? We're going to cover that in the next segment, and we're going to watch Deepak give us a roadmap to this case. We're going to look at where the body is, how he tells us specifically where to find the body. If you'll visit my website, again, forensichthoughtprints.com, this will give you more details of the approach.